As you go from remembering that you're this certain point in space-time to remembering that you're all points in space-time, and then to remembering that and you're all beyond metric space. You're all of that infinite all at the same time. And that is mind-boggling. Most people don't know what to do with that information. So to me, how we make it practical is to remember that when we are all of that, all at the same time, and when we're in that state, and you're really feeling it, right? You're really feeling the palpable interconnectedness of all of that, and why you can be in your consciousness here, but you can also be flying around the universe, doing something else over there. That interconnectedness feels like the highest love that we can imagine.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing. And what an incredible moment in time. My day seems to continually repeat itself. Maybe it might have something to do with the coincidence of the serendipity, the synchronicity, the very present moment that I have this great pleasure to welcome to the podcast an incredible conscious seeker, Valerie Varan, who, amongst many things, is a conscious creator, conscious seeker, a licensed therapist, and all things raising the bar of awareness for the followers and her very path that she's on in this lifetime. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you, San Qing. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yes, it's always, just sitting in this energy as we speak, and the chill and amplitude of energy that runs up our spine, just validating the very collection that we're taking right now as the present moment, is always a great sign of an incredible conversation. So without any further ado, I would love you to share with the audience just a little bit about yourself leading up to this point.
Let's see. Well, I'm a lifelong spiritual experiencer, and just to put that into context, just always having felt presence. By the fourth grade, I just really thought I wanted to be a priest or a nun until I found out what that really meant in this life. And I had my first apport, which was a cross necklace, in the fourth grade. By the sixth grade, I was contemplating atoms, my atoms homework. I just learned about atoms that day in science class and was contemplating that, and received a huge spiritual download, which essentially is what led me eventually into quantum physics, although of course early on I wouldn't have really had the name for it. And because I grew up in a very conventional surrounds, where anything I said practically was called weird or crazy, I learned early on to silence and learned to fit in. So I had a very conventional upstart, if you will, and went to the environmental engineering field, more in business development. But doing that, thinking like, well, at least maybe I can help the environment. And maybe that's a way I can contribute. And ultimately, the universe would have its way with me. I went kicking and screaming into the field of psychology. Back then, it was very Freudian and Skinner and behaviorism and materialist reductionist model. And it didn't resonate with me at all. So I really had no desire to go into the field of psychology. But as you mentioned, even in our introduction, when you're on this path, the synchronicities get ridiculous. And they did. And so I eventually surrendered and said, okay, fine. That too was unbelievable amount of synchronicity. And went into the field, and at first was working with a lot of children in child welfare and juvenile justice, and really wanting to help those that didn't have families, to really help them, and really wanting to change their lives. Except the universe then would again have its way with me, wanting me to go into private practice. And what I didn't know is all of these amazing experiencers out there and energy sensitives that the universe would then bring to me. And it completely changed my life, really, because it was the first time I was meeting other people, similar to myself. And the very thing that made me me on the inside, with all this quantum physics meets spirituality and meets psychology and self-growth and ways of moving into love, into higher and higher ways, everything that made me me was exactly what they needed. So it was just an everyday blessing. It was such a natural high to have that gift of exchange and interconnectedness, and finding ways that I could help in avenues I never thought possible. And so, of course, part of that path was looking into studying quantum touch. It was a form of hands-on energy healing. Studying Qigong. I was very much drawn to Qigong particularly. And of course, all kinds of healing modalities. But ultimately, that chapter ended in 2016 in a way, just after I had published my book, Living in a Quantum Reality, Using Quantum Physics and Psychology to Embrace Your Higher Consciousness. A lot of that book was written on all these experiences I had had with clients, and finding that there's a similar psychological, let's say, challenges that we come up against on the path. And I just written that and published it when my mother ended up really needing help. And so I dropped everything in Colorado and moved to Florida. And here we are about 6 years later, and coming out of it in a chapter yet again that I never knew would exist, where the universe is bringing quantum physicists into my realm, where we're having all these even deeper conversations than I ever thought possible, and bringing you into my realm, where I get to have people who appreciate these kind of conversations. So that pretty much probably sums up why I'm here and what I'm about.
Wow. What a great introduction to this incredible conversation. I mean, it really sort of fortifies who you are and your representation of the now and your seeking. And so, that intersection, that intertwining sort of like symbiotic relationship that we're becoming more evident or self-evident of within this sort of spiritual community, which is using language to identify what the experiencer is actually experiencing. So, the idea and the theory behind, quantum physics and science, as I always refer to, as a very new language, but it's quite effective at describing what it is that you are experiencing on this spiritual journey. And we're being able to experience that right now, because the simplicity of that is, when you understand the model that could, refer to the idea of, the entanglement theory, and, how that changes the whole output of what science sort of created back in the Newtonian sort of model, and expanding to something greater that seems more organic, that you can relate to and go, well, that makes sense to me. I do something like thinking that way. Share a little bit more with the audience about how that you embrace the quantum model in applying it to your own journey.
Well, I love how you introduce that, right? Because when you're having experiences, and again, I've had them my entire life, right? In a way, I just called it my invisible friends. I mean, in the 4th grade, how do you explain something that nobody knows anything about, but you have and that's a story behind a cross necklace on my dresser. But, how do you explain these things? How do you explain quantum downloads? How do you explain, anyway, all of these experiences, right? That would take us a couple of hours just to talk about the myriad of experiences. So when we're searching for a vocabulary, I love the way you put it. I mean, in a way, only talking about it in terms of energy, or I think I've noticed that you talk a lot about energy and frequency and vibration. And And physics gives us that, but of course, in the Newtonian materialist model, the only thing that exists is space and time, and it's a deterministic kind of trajectory to things where there's such a thing to have a independent observer, and we're detached and apart from all things, until we discovered that there's a whole quantum realm out there. And as you hinted, everything's entangled. Recently, Doug Matsky, quantum engineer, and I were having a conversation, and he was talking about, even when he did his dissertation, he was talking about the ubiquitous nature of quantum entanglement. So when we talk about, maybe for our viewers who don't have much background on this, I'll just give a tiny thing that says, well, when we're using the word quantum, and we want to use the word quantum responsibly, what are we referring to? Two things. One, they found out that energy moved in discrete packets, and they called it a quantum. And we have an evidence of that if a drop of water hits a still pond, and we see the concentric circles. The reason there's concentric circles with space in between is because of the way energy moves in these discrete packets. The second way we use the word quantum responsibly is referring to these quantum properties. So as you mentioned, quantum entanglement is a property, which I'll describe for our viewers in a moment. Wave-particle duality. They found out that everything in the universe has a wave-particle duality. And there's a non-local nature, not just a local nature. And what that means is, in Newtonian, they thought it was all energy having effects. But notice, in that world, it's all about electromagnetism. And electromagnetism effects wane with distance. But then all of a sudden, they were discovering that there are these effects that, regardless of distance, reality, whether it's on one side of the planet or another, or hypothetically, if it's on one side of the universe or another, the effects are simultaneous. And they first started noticing, for example, when they were playing around with let's say, subatomic particles, and I'm going to use this loosely for our viewers, but let's say they had a photon in London and a photon in California, and they tickled the one in London. The one in California moves exactly simultaneously at the same time. Well, how is that? There's got to be some kind of non-local effect, some kind of spooky action at a distance. And so then quantum entanglement was the phrase specifically for the fact that these two particles now cannot be separated. Again, what affects the one affects the other. So when we use the word entanglement, we're very specifically talking about that. And the fact that it doesn't matter how far apart we're separated. Well, notice what we all just said. Doesn't that relate to us spiritual experiencers? I mean, we automatically feel like we're all one, that it's all love, that it's all interconnected, and that we're all having effects on one another, all at the same time, all simultaneously. And of course, if someone has a near-death experience and they pass over, and a lot of times we call it a panoramic life review, or we might call it 360-degree kind of consciousness, they're experiencing all things at all the same time. There's a concurrency there, is maybe what a quantum engineer would say. Concurrency and superposition, like it's all happening at the same time. And not only would I experience my emotions and my thoughts of this life review, but I'm also experiencing every person I affected and every emotion that they had, but again, all at the same time. There is no other language that helps us describe our experiences other than like quantum entanglement, quantum non-locality, quantum superposition.
I love that. I love that. Within Taoism, we refer to this experience as the bellows, which is an expression of the mother. So everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You are all things and nothing at the same time. Now, to fast forward that to a contemporary offering within a language that might be a little bit more understandable from a layman, you would then refer to science or quantum physics. This understanding of the relationship that Taoist seeker has had with the universe is thousands of years old. Now, we always remind the seeker everything is a bellows, it's an expression of the mother, the Tao, and man is not like that. So that charge that you and I have right now, it's like a self-realized feeling that cannot be measured by written words or processes that come from the intellect. It is an expression of the present moment, which is where you access that. So from a Taoist perspective, we are accessing the Wu Ji, which is between the breath in and the breath out, between the contraction and the expansion is the stillness, which is how we access that present moment, which is all things. Thought, feeling, and emotion are the three ingredients that create your reality, and that present moment is now. And so then we reflect on that within a more new age language that would refer to the entanglement, the quantum model of understanding how this is possible. And from a Taoist being able to speak on this from a metaphysical perspective, the merging of this, physiological, psychological realization that turns into, spoken word that you can reflect on, because everything must be self-evident. Everything must be validated by you. You are the seeker, and your knowing will be your expression of that as the now. And that feeling will be the expansion or contraction, the simplicity of reality that gives you a level up on, basically psychic abilities come down to the sensory perception realization that that's all there is. And so when you access that from an alchemical perspective as a Taoist, you're able to now play with this, what you spoke on, which is the electromagnetic spectrum, which is not the Tao, which is very similar but not the same. This is what we consider the distortion of reality. This is cut from perfection. Everything is light, wave, matter, particle that is generated from your attention intention, creating these forms that we are observing that are in the form of the flesh and blood before you, the objects that you touch now, the camera, the sound. Everything has its place, but it's being altered by the seeker. And that's a part that's probably a little bit problematic for the average digester of seeking this stuff, but it will be self-evident by your experience. And so we show you how to cultivate the energy, so it will come in the form of manifestation, magic, healing, synchronicity, serendipity that will be undeniable, and it won't come in a measurement of a Planck unit of energy. We are looking at the simplicity of it. And I feel like there's a lot more of this, and I'd love you to speak on this. This is happening a lot more today, where people are, I've been helping people find themselves, remembering who they are for over 30 years now. And so when you get them to remember, all of a sudden profound things take place. Today, for most seekers, they're into the experience as over the spoken or written word. Have you noticed this at all?
Well, as you beautifully put it, I mean, there is no word. I mean, anytime we take the experience beyond words and try to put it in any kind of form or structure, by that very nature, we have limited it, and therefore we don't capture the infinite essence. Everything that you said brings up so much for me. One, let me make sure I address the world of electromagnetism and frequency, and therefore Planck, and therefore space-time. And let's differentiate it from that which is beyond. But let me first start by, when you were talking about the in-breath and the out-breath, and therefore there's a space in between. What I love about the more we've learned about space, right? We used to think it was empty. And as you mentioned, our perception. So what we see with our eyes we see and experience things as physical, as if they are firm and have structure and they're solid. But even in contemporary physics, we know that when we zoom closer, it's really made of 99.9999% space. And then when we take that, which is supposedly the not space, so let's say a little speck of dust floating in a cathedral, as Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned on his Cosmos series that he had a while back. And he's, pretty much a conventional thinker. He wouldn't even really be deeper down the rabbit hole like you and I are. And even from that more conventional modern physics view, as he said, when I'm standing in this cathedral, it's a cathedral volume of space to that little speck of dust. But if I go look into the speck of dust too is comprised of a cathedral volume of space to a speck of dust, and so on and so forth. So the speck of dust is always an illusion because it gives way to realize it's nothing. And so therefore, no wonder the vocabulary of how the something comes from the nothing. What I also love is William Bray, who was a physicist who had over 35 medically documented deaths, and that was medically documented deaths. He had a whole bunch of other deaths, although he didn't revive this time he's passed. But even he said in a fifth teaspoon of supposedly empty space, there's more energy than, I think he said, 3 trillion universes. I mean, that's mind-blowing, right? Mind-blowing. So the miraculous of space as the nothing, which is really teeming with all the potentialities of the something. I mean, it's truly mind-boggling. And yet what we're discovering today at an even more modern view of quantum physics is that you and I are going to have to look for different vocabulary, because the word energy is a space-time word. The way it's defined in physics, it's all about space-time metrics. So we can't really even use that word. We can use the phrase effective energy, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But apparently, when we use energy and frequency and anything with a wavelength, that's all space-time metrics. And yet the experiencer is clearly experiencing beyond the space-time. It's beyond. So we can say at least quantum, and so therefore non-locality, entanglement, and superposition and all those, they aren't energy, it's beyond, it's quantum. We can just say that. But guess what? The even more recent rendition is going towards the role of information. And so what we're finding is that if we use a model for information, for instance, Doug Matsky that I mentioned earlier, he might call it a hyperdimensional proto-bit physics model and get into it to where your eyes roll. But when you take the time to really understand what he's trying to say, because he's really trying to help experiencers explain their experience. The experiences are happening. And you have a whole beautiful group of physicists and engineers who firmly believe that they're as real as any other experiences that we're having. But then how do you explain it? So in, let's say, an informational model, they would say that if you imagine a bit as containing a dimension of meaning, and as you add complexity to these dimensions of meaning, then you're building structures out of information. So our mind comes from and source is that realm. No wonder in ancient wisdom we call it all powerful and all knowing. It's all knowing. There's all the information is there, and it's all as a whole, all being experienced in the now. But in this bit physics, there's a way to conceive, if you want to do the math, and we won't get into the math, but if you want to do the math from a physicist or an engineer standpoint, they can literally take information and this proto-bit physics and construct the quantum realm out of it. They can construct the structure for any of the standard model particles. They can go from beyond metric space to Planck, to energy and electromagnetism, and create space-time out of it. And so for experiencers who really want to know their experience is real, it's fantastic that we're finally getting to people who will say, yes, more fundamental than energy and frequency and space-time is beyond space-time, it's quantum, and even behind that is information and meaning, which of course, no wonder in many of our conversations, we will say, oh, consciousness is fundamental. Well, why? Because intuitively we can sense the information. We can sense the meaning. Like when I had my first information download, I mean, I'm in 6th grade. And next thing you know, I'm receiving a download that's talking about how everything is alive and consciousness is in its own way. And I'm getting this download that later on, when I heard the astronaut Edgar Mitchell talk about his experience coming back from the Apollo 14 mission, that's why he couldn't find anything in the literature to explain it in the scientific literature. So he founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And that's what that origin story was all about. And so they are gathering all these scientists to study all of these various experiences that we group under psychic or psi, or, again, we don't have the vocabulary, but it's all mental. It's all based in consciousness. And all these myriad of experiences, what they have in common is we're going beyond. And I'll share one other thing that Doug and I talked about that was particularly fascinating. We were just talking about this in the recent couple of weeks. In that bit physics model, let's say a bit is, so now we're talking hyperdimensions. We're not talking electromagnetism. So we'll just use the word hyperdimensions. And let's say you have a one hyperdimension of a bit, and then 2 bits would be a 2 hyperdimensional, and I'll just start saying dimensional. 3 dimensions are what he calls a qubit. And the fantastic thing about that is when you look at the trinities in all of the worldviews, all of the world religions, he really talks about how the qubit has the exact structure of a virtual photon. And the only difference between a virtual photon and what we would call a real photon in space-time is that the virtual photon doesn't contain energy, and the one in space-time does. But to experiencers who experience the light that is beyond, right? And look at God is light, God is love. Well, what does that mean in this physics language? It means that at the source, at the beginning, at the Tao, then it's just pure oneness that's not made of anything that looks like a something. It's got power to it for sure, right? No wonder it's called all powerful and all knowing. It's huge information. But again, it's all happening in the now. And so here we are tapping into, like you said, the contractions and the expansions, the cyclic nature. We're talking about space-time. Anything with a wavelength or anything cyclic would be space-time. And then beyond, we don't really know what to call it. So Doug's calling it hyperdimensional. I'll go with that.
Right. Well, I can give you a heads up on what Taoists have been calling it for. I'm just going to put it out there. And I've had the historians on here before that have researched to discover the origins of the human being well into 1 million years past. So for me to describe it in something that would be not problematic for someone's mind to be blown, but 10s, 20, 30, 100,000 years in the making, even though on paper, from a Taoist seeker perspective, the origins of the Chinese culture as we know it, which was seeded by the Yellow Emperor, one of my teachers. See, when you talk about downloads, I've been channeling direct source information from my teachers, over 171 of them, for well over 30 years. And one of my my favorite teachers is Lao Tzu, of course, which I'm in concert with on a daily basis, minute by minute. And I would have to be
Beautiful.
very honest with the audience that I know nothing, and anything that comes out of my mouth is coming directly from him. I don't claim to have any captured thought or moment or feeling that is referencing this, what people would perceive as the 3D reality. And in essence, people need to understand when they speak on that from a dimensional shift perspective, you are already in the fourth dimension, which we refer to the time and space. So you're one slip away from something that could be mystical, conscious, created awareness that goes beyond this very slowed down 3D reality. And of course, you want to bring this in. And so we call that chi, the mother of all things, the source. It's life force. It's life force. That's the creation of everything. And so the mother, being the Tao, is the very seed of the creation of your reality as you know it. From a Taoist seeker perspective, that comes back to what would be reflected on someone's theory of the Big Bang. We always reference to the cycle of the highest number of 9, which sort of then can be problematic for some people that want to bring it down to a 12.7.5 point numerology, referencing how people understand astrology, deeper natures of sort of an expression of what this consciousness really means. Well, it means whatever it means to you. And to validate it, it must be transmuted into a 3D offering for you to step beyond that, what we call the glimpse, where someone gets a taste of the spiritual dragon. They chase that dragon. They go, oh, I heard a voice. I had a download. I saw an apparition. I spoke to my loved ones that were on the other side. I had a near death, an OBE, or whatever you want to call it. And this is where it can be problematic. So most people have this defined idea of what reality is, and then they believe that they understand the very infrastructure of this conscious veil between fourth and fifth dimension. And I appreciate any seeker's expression of that. Yet when you have an absolute, I suggest you run in the opposite direction.
Exactly. I mean, it's impossible to ever conceive of all of that.
And I think a lot of people are very set in their ways, and they give, from a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell would express as what he calls his my big toe expression of reality, which he calls the large consciousness system's expression of reality is giving you what you want. So if you want demons and dragons and you're the slayer of the demons and dragons, then that will be transmuted into your reality. And quite frankly, having dealt with people from a psychological perspective transmuted into something greater as consciousness over 30 years, one of my lineages that I was ordained as a priest, one of the fundamental rituals and structures of that is very ancient, and it's exorcisms. And people are like, whoa, oh, that scares me. Well, this is all deep and rooted into ancient indigenous practices that are founded, that create what someone might call a language that, someone by the name of Joe Dispenza would call to demystify the mystical. And, the reality is you are measuring your reality by your experience, and you can create anything and everything from the seed of your imagination. And what makes it valid is you being able to have a self-evident moment of this present now. And so to do that, you cannot be a place, person, or thing. To be the present moment will materialize in that. And now from Taoist alchemy practices, which are, in my opinion, very biased, but I'm being a Taoist teacher, I've yet to find anything that comes close to that inner alchemy understanding of the energetic architecture. And we, get down with things that I teach people, all sorts of magical, supernatural things that you can play with this electromagnetic spectrum and then tap right into the mother and create something that would be perceived as a miracle, before your very eyes, and it becomes very palpable, very tangible, and it's now. And so this has many different layers to it as the seeker experiences all these weird things that are weird until they're not. You know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And that's kind of like the expression of, you know, what are you contributing to the conscious collective, or as a dear friend of mine, James Tooney, would say, spiritual consciousness. And this separation is knowing that you are the now. And so what you see before you, the reflection that looks back at you as flesh and blood, is the very limited perception, yet it is an anchor to this experience. As you are an ambassador, from a Taoist perspective, you're an ambassador of this incredible planet Earth, and you're another expression of that, contributing to humanity. And part of the seeker's realization, that charge we're getting right now, is having this self-evident expression where you can create and be in service. And some people go, well, no, that sounds a little too, I like the philosophy part and the alchemy part, Jefu. I just want to get all crazy and Harry Potter like and levitate and separate electric from magnetic and all this kind of like, and that's part of the alchemy. And I teach people this. And so, doing things that would seem unreal, like enveloping my forearm in anesthesia, running a skewer through it, pulling it out and not having an exit or entry point. People go, oh my goodness, how is that possible? This is the now. And you have the ability to do these things, but you must be into the properties and understanding of this substance we call, within this electromagnetic spectrum, energy. And then furthermore, the mother, the chi, the life force, which is it's on a separate level. And I guess the reference point right now within this unified field theory for some physicists that are holding on to this is this idea that it's the 0 point, which will refer to the stillness in a Taoist model of understanding. And I mean, this can go on and on and on. For me, the self-evident moment is the only moment. And so all of this is sort of just talking head stuff until you can realize it yourself as a seeker and validate it for yourself. And I imagine through your own admission, through the downloads that you've received, through your own human experience, some of your life experiences, you've been able to validate these very timelines and turning points where a level of consciousness has been raised. And you're like, wow, I was given that information 5 years ago, and holy moly, I'm living it right now. Or maybe I was given it 5 seconds ago, and it's being expressed in this very serendipity, sort of synchronized moment of reality that people would seem as you are very charmed, you're very lucky. And so that's being able to bring something in this space that is not of this realm. And so a lot of people go, wow, well, this is remembering who you are. And now you kind of get to the secret source of that. And when we refer to everything as a bellows, and man is not like that, is the second, as one of my teachers would remind you, the second you are aware you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. And so there we have this spiritual enlightenment, spiritual consciousness going, okay, well, if I'm not the body and I'm the now, what does that even, mind blown? Where do I go from there? And another very deep meaning of the Taoist seeker is remind the man who's never left the village. Let him know he's seen the world, because it comes from here. And why is that so relevant? Because I'll refer back to what you mentioned earlier about the information. It's no longer electromagnetic. It's the information, yet we use a vehicle like the magnetic spectrum or the magnetic expression of that through the heart to take this packet of information and express it into what we perceive as the field. And then you identify as this, as you would put I'm sorry, you mentioned.
Oh, hyperdimensional. He was using that phrase.
Which is the now. And we've just, for thousands of years, it's just distance healing for a Taoist. So you can, operate anywhere in this realm and create a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing, and it will be self-evident. Yet there is this aspect of being subject to the duality, which is part of your human expression, is this dualistic expression within this realm. And once you are able to decipher that and access the Wu Ji, you can create what they would consider miracles, right? But the energetic properties are really important, because this is how you use this physical tuning fork as your realization that it goes beyond. And so you can register that as the grounding sort of tool, as the ambassador of the planet Earth, to raise the consciousness. Now, the definition of that, what that means for the seeker, is for the seeker. What does, some people express it as, as you mentioned earlier, the soul review, all this kind of things. When I experience any dimension beyond this one, and I have spent some time over many decades teaching people all these type of like ancient, psychic abilities, mediumship, channeling, healing, Taoist alchemy. This is what I've spent decades teaching people. And what happens is you get past that, and it's really this expression for myself and anyone that I've taught, is you get past this veil and you enter into complete phosphorus white light. And then between that, after the phosphorus white light, you will enter complete void and darkness. And it's when you are entering into the void and darkness that you can exit and create anything that you choose to, like that pulsating you're getting right now. It's like you're choosing to create whatever it is that you want within the Wu Ji, right? And so you can go on. I've done 36 dimensions from this very dimension. I mean, I think I recorded, it was like 14 hours. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. Yet,
wow, 14 hours.
14 hours that seemed like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I got through 36 dimensions, and the possibilities are endless. Yet some people have this, as Tom Campbell would say, this Hollywood version. Remember, if you're speaking it into your reality, it will be provided to you. So now they have this perception of potential other views of reality. They need to use, sleep paralysis, near-death experiences, OBEs, to generate that. Now, I can, through my own mastery, and I've been doing this a long time, I can be very conscious. I'm 100% conscious. And even now, as we speak, I'm operating in the universe, flying through, stars and planets, and experiencing it on a visceral level through this tuning fork. Yet what someone would consider that, it's like, oh my goodness, Jifu, you're having an out-of-body experience. Yes, you could identify as that, but this is what we call about the now. So you can operate in all dimensions at once, which is a mastery of the energetics. And this is where I think people have lost their way when it comes to seeking this stuff, is you need a method to cultivate this stuff. So within clear senses, a lot of people are like, oh, I feel the energy. I don't need Qigong or any of this. I got it, man. I'm the new spiritual age version of whatever. And I'm like, I support that. I think that's amazing. Now, explain to me what that means to you, because if you are still operating in a dualistic perception, which most people are, you will reap the fruit and rewards of that expression, which will be limited, and it will transmute into your physical flesh. And so if you have fear, it will find you. And so you will perceive things as this heaven and hell, good, bad. And Taoists don't perceive reality that way. It's yin and yang. Yet a lot of people want to use that differentiator from a psyche perspective to understand what it is they're experiencing. If you fall into the dualistic expression and you are not as now, you will be subject to that. So then all of a sudden it transmutes into a physical ailment. The mental, emotional transmute into the flesh. From a Taoist perspective, it's Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old. My teacher, Yellow Emperor, got the download from the universe, and he was magnetized to the earth for 18 days and nights, downloading Chinese culture as you know it today. Everything from Taoist alchemy to Chinese medicine was given to him, and it's been basically embellished and altered through realm of man, emperors, cycles through the Chinese landscape, bringing you forth this expression of the language we call Mandarin, which would be simplified, not traditional. Traditional would be Cantonese, which is sort of spattered through the Chinese culture throughout China itself, but it's still present. Whereas you go rewind all the way back to first acknowledged communication, which would be over 6,000 BC, which goes way beyond that from his own admission with myself. And I publish this stuff, and people get mind blown because they feel it. They go, that's true. I feel this through my whole tuning fork. You're not lying. I'm like, of course I'm not. I'm sharing information with you. You are the person, you are the present moment that determines whether this is valid or not. And so this moment, it goes back to pictographs and oracle bone reading for a Taoist, and then it mutates into the 7 generations of change from emperors to emperors over the Chinese history that gives you the language that we're speaking of. Now, there are dialect variables throughout China, but, I mean, we use the tonality, the variable tonality, to transmute that. That's why it's so powerful and ancient, and it has a different, from seeking the DNA strand. There are no coincidences since the 60s to the expression now. We identify with epigenetics and understanding that you are a product of your environment on a deeper level. This can be altered in this substance that, words, letters, numbers, symbols, they sing to you. You gravitate to this, and this becomes your own realization. And I use that sometimes to help people understand, well, what is it that's driving me to this very moment? I would love you to share with the audience a little bit about that, or what you consider that driving force, that substance.
You mean for the universe or within?
Yeah, I mean, you go way beyond what you have learned to express to help the seekers that follow you, that understand your very deeper, knowing that drives people to listen to your spoken word. This is way deeper than physics or science.
It is. And again, none of the vocabularies do it justice, but we're in time and space, so we have to borrow some. So I guess I would say, for me, and I love how you mentioned when we go to, let's say, the light realms, but beyond that, the void. And I'm thinking of a particular experience as I'm saying that. But ultimately, for me, if we're using the word motivation, I'm going to pick when I'm in the state of all that is, feeling myself as all that is and all that isn't even in form yet. It's such a beautiful, interconnected, like instead of bilocation, it's all location, right? It's such a superposition. It's a concurrency. It's like you're just feeling the robustness of the life force and its pregnant potential to change form with every thought, like you said, with every. So no wonder the word love, capital L, is used, because what other word captures when you're aware simultaneously of the true interconnectedness of your structure and the inner essence all at the same time? So no wonder when I first learned the phrase, wave particle duality, it was a helpful phrase, because the wave word captured the inner essence that feels moving in energy and thought and information. And the particle word captured the form. And even in physics, we know that when you change the energetic structure, the material thing changes. So no wonder you can stick a needle through your arm, and the power of thought knows that all of this is just one grand thought. So it's just thought intersecting with thought. So the only effects we're going to have are the effects that we believe that we should have, or that we've limited ourselves to. So no wonder, like you said, as a master, and I don't call myself a master by any means, but as a master, no wonder you can feel like you can do anything to a body and have no ill effects, because is there really a body? I mean, at that level, there really isn't. All of that is just thought in structure, and anything that's structured, we call a form. But for me, as far as going inner, right, instead of taking the structure and the form, going to the inner, the motivation, the wave, it's just remembering. Like I can't even use the word seeker, because to use the word seeker means that we haven't found something and that we're separated from something. But since that's impossible, I do love when we use the word remembering, right? Because you go from remembering that you're this certain point in space-time to remembering that you're all points in space-time, and then to remembering that and you're all beyond metric space. You're all of that infinite all at the same time. And that is mind-boggling. I mean, most people don't know what to do with that information. So to me, how we make it practical is to remember that when we are all of that all at the same time, and when we're in that state, and you're really feeling it, right? You're really feeling the palpable interconnectedness of all of that, and why you can be in your consciousness here, but you can also be flying around the universe, doing something else over there. That interconnectedness feels like the highest love that we can imagine. I mean, the human version of love has so bastardized the actual, the word love.
The Hallmark version?
So the oneness is so amazing. And here, because we've splintered off and we've localized our mind, we've localized our attention, and we've localized our intention, we've localized where do we apply love? How much do we apply love? We're such stingy dolers out of love. But imagine, this is the world I love to imagine. Imagine that all of us are remembering. And let's just feel into that energetically for a moment. And yes, I'll use the word energy. And we're feeling and we're remembering all of that, and how incredibly loving it is. And we're remembering, let's say, why we decided to go from white light, which is all spectrums, to, let's say, a violet light, one spectrum. That's in a way what we could call materializing here in a body. We've just chosen to go from white light to appearing as violet light. And while we're here in our limited strand of energy, if you will, maybe we have decided to bridge to a specific location in space-time to have a specific effect. But imagine if each of us are remembering our unique combo plan, because that is one thing that we can appreciate. And I so appreciate when I went down the physics rabbit hole, is getting that scientific verification that we really all are unique energetic fingerprints. I mean, each dimension is so, in their words, orthogonally different, and it each brings a different flavor, and we each are doing that. So imagine that we are realizing our uniqueness, our particular snowflake of all of this potentiality, all of this energy, all of this love, and we were absent of our fear. We just were expressing, like you said, the energy was coming in. Whether I'm breathing out or breathing in always depends on which view I'm looking at. So if I'm going to say breathing in beyond breathing in the infinite, breathing out creation, breathing out space-time. What if I'm breathing in all of my beautiful qualities and feeling all of that unique snowflake of love? And what if I'm absent of fear and I'm breathing out into space-time, that in its purest form, and I'm being so me and everybody else is being so them, that what we create on this plane is mind-boggling. I mean, every problem that we have on the planet right now would instantly vanish, because not only are we having effects on one another, and not only can we in slow-mo space-time clean up the environment and what have you, but as you alluded to earlier, we're affecting Mother Earth, we're affecting the solar system and the galaxies, all in the now. And quite frankly, even all of what we seem to be doing in the future to clean up, at that level we can bring back into our past. And so no wonder it can seem like magic that we can instantaneously even change the condition of our planet like that. If we would all operate at that level, if we would all operate at that space. So that's what I love about the studies on precognition and the models of retrocausation, is we really are seeing that the past is not firm and the future really is not firm. We have access to all of it in the now, and we're changing it, which reminds me of this download that at the time I was like, why am I getting that? But I'll just relate it because it's kind of related to what we're talking about now. But I woke up one Thanksgiving morning at my in-laws, all ready to be the one to, make Thanksgiving dinner for everyone. But I literally had to sit down for a while and gather my waking consciousness about me, because I had so awakened out of a state. I was in this completely other reality. The best I can put into words is it was like a pixelated reality, kind of like a Times Square or Hong Kong, or like neon lights, but pixelated. And there was an energy being there communicating with me. And the bottom line message was, go back and tell everyone that everything they're doing in every reality, that was the key message, in every reality, is all having effects on all of us, all in the now. And as I was trying to digest, because it's always beyond the space-time sequential way we're thinking of it, right? So as I was trying to digest what all I was seeing and given, the reason I was like, why are you telling me this? Why am I the one to go tell everyone? Because it felt like, today when we think of computers, when we think of virtual reality, when we think of artificial realities and all these things, I mean, you're looking at a person here who's never even played a video game. I have zero interest in playing video games. I mean, I love being in the now, creating in the now. And so at first pass, I'm like, I felt like I was being told that, okay, when you think you're playing a video game and when you think you're killing zombies and you're thinking that's all separate from you, but actually you're really killing. Like everything you're doing, even if you think it's in this virtual reality, it's as much of a reality as anything. And you're really doing it, and it's having immediate effects on you and everything else, and every other version of you and every other version of everyone else throughout all of these versions of all realities. And then, because you'll appreciate this, a few series of synchronicities was like this. So I'm taking this in, trying to figure this out, and going, why did you give me that? Like, I don't even play video games. And then I looked down and there was a magazine and Mark Zuckerberg's face was staring back at me. So of course I'm like, okay, that's not a coincidence. What's that about? So I pick it up and look at it. And there's a whole article in a magazine about Zuckerberg was introducing Oculus Rift at the time. And it was a whole article about all this VR, AR, all of these things. And so I'm just laughing. But like you said, it's mind-boggling for us to realize true responsibility with every thought we have, with every action we take. Noticing that what some people call karma, it's it's perhaps a limited way to think about it, that, oh, we're having karma, and so we're going to have another life, and we're going to have time and effect consequences, and reap those benefits. We're reaping them right now. Every thought we have, every action we take is affecting us in the now. And even if we're like, oh, I just thought about killing them, oh, I just thought of cussing them out, oh, I just dreamed of it. Well, it's as real. We have to start the responsibility of realizing that all of this is as real or unreal, depending on which way we want to look at it. These are just different realities with different structured forms that are manifesting on different, well, I guess we could call it thought currents. I don't know. What are your thoughts that come up with?
Well, yeah, I mean, karma is an interesting thing that
Yeah.
comes across the table for any Taoist seeker, because people refer to it within an Eastern sort of like philosophy, or Eastern religious model of understanding. That's generally when most people reference it, or they have remembrance that karma is based in this sort of like understanding. Yet it's a dualistic representation of reality. So, I would say to you that if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. So, if I was to actually measure anything that would be represented within a neuroplasticity perspective, which again, when I referenced absolute, that sort of like absolute truth is kind of like, I've had many discussions with neuroscientists that are, well, you can't experience the third eye. It's not sympathetically innervated. It's impossible. Yet once you obtain your access to the 50 trillion cells that you possess within this physical flesh as the now, through the alchemy processes within Taoism, you can feel anything and everything all at once and nothing at once, this present moment. But there's a processes to that being realized, not this psychological telling yourself what you want to hear, not telling yourself the truth. The truth for the seeker is this present moment, but to obtain it, that's where we get down to the secret source of the alchemy, so that it's not just a figment of your imagination that you just keep repeating to yourself, like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? I mean, people have this moment. If they rehearse it enough, there's a thing that's going on in the spiritual community called fake it till you make it. And I come across a lot of the fake it till you make it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Understand that, you're in your own place or your own journey of consciousness. Yet I would say that the thought does not enter the reality when it's not expressed through the physicality. And so that remains within
Keyword enter.
Right. So it's a dualistic thing. Now, for a Taoist, fearlessness is the seed of that. First and foremost, entry level Harry Potter stuff. We identify emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. That is part of the human condition. And it's like, wow, whoa, hang on, whoa, stop. What are you saying? I'm like, listen, I will teach you how to treat this as a present moment. So that means that you don't erase your personality. It was given to you as part of your incarnation, reincarnation, however you want to define it, as this experience of your human condition, your personality. Me, I like chocolate, riding my side by side through the desert 100 miles an hour, and I actually watch Netflix once in a while. That has nothing to do with obtaining the present moment, because you're nothing in all things at that moment to obtain this, what we will call 3D self-evident now. And so that will be transmuted with the mastery of those alchemical processes, because that's what you're being subject to through your own admission, sharing the electromagnetic spectrum. So from a Buddhist perspective, they call it, the sun hitting the magnetism of the earth, using that to create the light spectrum that we call the rainbow, and the center point is where someone would refer to as a Hindu perspective, the heart chakra, right? The center point, the greeny, pinky expression of that light from the sun's rays, transmuting it into this reality. That's the rainbow body from a Buddhist perspective. And once you obtain that, you become all with everything. Now, from a Taoist perspective, we call it the Wuji infinite body. And you obtain that access, and you're able to do some really crazy Harry Potter stuff that would, levitating. I get excited about physical healing. To this day, I saw my first one 30 years ago, transmuted things. Being a witness to that is, to most people, unbelievable. I see it on a daily basis, these serendipity moments. Now, from someone who's measured into this sort of like what you call precognition, telekinesis, other things that are being measured within a science community, you have these moments where I refer to bending spoons, that present moment, right? Which, it's no different than physical flesh. It's no different than transmuting now. And so when you are able to obtain that, the graduation level for someone I teach would be, tactile responsive of metal. Your attention intention goes to the center point, because the center point is the access to everything. And you bend it like butter. It just melts like butter in your hands. And it's between that breath in and breath out is when you obtain that. Now, then you go to the next level where you're holding a spoon and you bend it like you melt it like a candle. Or the third one, graduation day, is when you take a fork and you move the prongs in either direction using your attention intention. These are all just present moment things. Now, I've spoken to many people that have been trained in these type of things, and I train people in this stuff for decades. You watch for physical flesh, you watch the flesh transmute before your very eyes. It wiggles and shifts. And this is part of the contracting and expanding that we talk on. And you will feel it. You will feel this very present moment. And it's unreal for 99.9% of people. It's supernatural. But it's accessible to everybody. Yes. Everyone has that ability to access that. So the karmic model is an interesting one. From a Taoist magic perspective, we frame all the magic on the subject of the individuals basically, submitting to dualistic perspectives. You are going to basically be subject to your belief system. So if you are in the dualistic model and you are fearful, you are controlled by your emotions, it will be problematic. So what does this mean in a nutshell? It's like, is the glass half empty or half full? What do you embody? What do you know to be true? And then, so if you walk under a ladder and you believe it's going to give you bad luck, it's going to present itself in that reality. Whereas if you believe you are not of this body, you believe of this present moment, you know it to be true through it and our chemical processes, so that you have a substance that can validate it, not just your mind telling you that this is the now, or I'm going to be good. I am of this body. A lot of the things, like something like The Secret, was fundamentally so disappointing for many people, was it separated the seeker. It separated the person who was embodying what? Well, it's why? Because they asked them, what is your value system? Now, to obtain miracles, manifestation, magic, healing, now means nothing and everything. So you're not a place, person, or thing. You are a place, person, or thing. You are all things now. That's the only way it's going to happen. And I think you eloquently spoke on that as part of a scientific model of understanding this present moment. And that's sort of like being more and more evident through this new language that is what we have known as Taoists for thousands of years. And it just presents itself in another way that will be validated for the user. But karma in of itself is only relevant to the seeker that is operating in a dualistic perception. Now, that's than most people. That's like 99% of people. I mean, you have to come to a place of the now that comes through a cultivational practice that can be instantaneous. I always remind people, you can listen to a podcast I've done or an interview, or, take a workshop, anything that I teach people, and you can instantly remember who you are. which goes beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. That source, that life force, the mother, is the now. And it happened to me 30 years ago. I remembered who I was, 1,000 lives before this, and all the good stuff that goes in between, teaching people all that stuff. And I'm able to access it and teach people how to access it. But it's a cultivational practices, and people miss that. They're missing
Yes.
that. They're getting into the new age stuff, and they're like, well, I can feel it. I can do this. I don't need a teacher. I'm like, absolutely. The whole understanding of Taoism as a seeker is this, I would refer it to a Gnostic path of self-realization, of knowing. That's what it's about. And the highest level of ascension for a Taoist is direct source channeling. So we have 9 stages of this development. We always reference to the 9 because that's the cycle and the creation of life, which would be representative of as below, as above, a Hermetic principle. All things are mental, as you referred to. Within Taoism, we speak on it like this. My teacher has this very clear, the Jade Emperor, there's an incantation that we use that sums up it all. And it's very somatic. It says, a power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. Now, that somatic feeling that you had, that's the now. That's the visceral acknowledgement. Holy crap, this is real. Yes. And it refers to the understanding that this is all mirrored. That, whatever you're experiencing is, you are a micro of a macro. All is one, one is all. And that simplicity would come in the language of the quantum model of understanding, that as you put it, what was it? The
Non-locality.
Non-locality. I had one of my students has been with me for decades. He's got a PhD. He does a lot of research for many different universities. And he came to me one day. He's like, Jifu, oh my goodness, because we speak on this one cultivational practice, which is basically observing the death of a star, the raising of the red phoenix, and the revealing of black hole energy. And this is a cultivational practice within the middle dantian that elevates these activations that are second to none from our chemical processes. But he's like, oh my goodness, I got a grant to do some research on the nucleus of a cell, and you wouldn't believe what I came back with. I'm like, please do tell me. You know what I found in the nucleus of a cell? I go, what? Black hole energy. And he just went, because he's been using this access of the present moment through his cultivational practices to create the serendipity, to create the coincidence, to create the now, the manifestation, magic healing. Yet it keeps being reinforced through this new age language of, this is all happening as indigenous, ancient in its knowing. And then we have this new language that I always remind people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. There are a million ways up the mountain. And so when there is an absolute truth, stop, about face, and run. Because there is
Absolutely.
now. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more because, again, I mean, here, there's no way that there can be one path. I mean, different things fit different people because behind it all is meaning. Behind it all is symbology. Like, it's just pointing to something beyond, and different language or different ways might be helpful. Yeah, I don't even know how much more I really want to say on that. I love that you're reminding everybody that there is no absolute, whether it's in science. I mean, everything that someone thinks is a scientific fact gets superseded by a broader scientific fact. And anything that we think is a fact is perhaps only relevant for a range of what we call this reality. So I love when people come and say, oh, guess what? I found in the nucleus of a cell a black hole. I love Nassim Haramein, who, talks about the black hole that's the inner of the proton. And of course, we're all made of protons. I love David Bohm's the view, and of course he went and studied many of the Eastern traditions. He had a huge spiritual side to him. The quantum physicist David Bohm, who was kind of a student of Einstein's. I mean, they really appreciated the Eastern thoughts, and I love how he talked about an inner embedded reality, right? An implicate to an explicate order. But what I love that is, I don't know why, but right now the symbol I keep getting over and over and over is the torus field. And when you were talking earlier about, there was something you were talking about that kept conveying cyclic, right? And the serpent eating its own tail. The significance of, a circle is in flat 2D reality, but it's a sphere in regular reality. I mean, what I love about this is the infinite nature that it's pointing to, and the fact that, like you said, it's are we bringing that which is beyond in this very moment into reality? Like, it's just this whole embedded, implicate order to explicate order. It's just this churning, right? In that torus field, you kind of see like the energies of the heart, like heart math shows us, and you'll see the energies going like this. Of course, even the magnetic field of our planet Earth looks like that. It looks like a torus field, and it's kind of coming in that. But it's churning back out like butterfly wings, and again, it's just feeding itself. So it's just this beyond words image that I have in my head that's just this constant feeding, if you will, right? The food is always there, and we're always eating it, and it's always doing something when we eat it. I mean, the only thing that, everything changes. Everything is constantly moving. Everything is constantly evolving. That's why, even though I didn't go back to, I mean, I'm almost 64 now. It was, I was probably 40 when I finally got kicked out and, went ahead and studied Western psychology and became a psychotherapist. But even when I was going in 2000s, there was still this denial of neuroplasticity. In fact, in my program, I had already heard of neuroplasticity because I've always been so holistic. And it wasn't even mentioned. They were still teaching that there was no such thing as neurogenesis. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So when you look at neuroplasticity, what do I see when I look at the science of neuroplasticity? I see this beautiful nerve that is strictly some cells that are clearly quite conscious. They're clearly quite evolving and changing with every moment in response to its environment. The field of epigenetics, the DNA does the same thing. At a certain point in time, we're going to have to realize every cell we have does the same thing. It's all in communion. It's all in change and adaptation to the whole. What is it that's being fed in? Well, now now what you're seeing in front of you is a structure that reflects what just got fed in. And it's happening at all levels and all at once. So let's see, if we even take that to spiritual experiences, you channel over 100 beings that are probably incarnated somewhere, as well as communicating from you at different levels, right? There's no limit to where they're communicating from. It's probably many aspects of your own self that are also communicating to you from various aspects of reality. So whether someone sees their dead aunt or, mom and dad or what have you, how much can we say that our thought and expectation of wanting to see mom and dad created mom and dad as if it really wasn't mom and dad, possibly, or what if that energy and motivation and that inner essence called out to an aspect of mom and dad that now appeared, because it's all conscious, it's all being, and it can all, I don't know how to say bilocate in every plane at the same time. Trilocate, how do you say that? Simultaneously locating everywhere. So no wonder the masters have been able to bilocate. Sounds like you've been able to do that. I know of these people that can, that do that. I seem to do it in the other planes, but not here maybe. But it's just this beautiful realization that it's all consciousness. You mentioned Tom Campbell. He put forth his model in that book. It's a more recent book. Perhaps you've already seen it since you know Tom, but a Deeper Reality series. There was a Beyond UFO series, and that came out through an Edgar Mitchell Foundation. They called it they did what was called the Free, FREE, and it was an experiencer study. And they did this Beyond UFOs book that was an expression of, well, what did we find out when we surveyed all these experiencers? So that was that book. And then there was so much that came out of it. Then 2 volumes, volume 1 and 2 of a book called Deeper Reality came out. And I know Tom was in there, among other people, like different astrophysicists, psychologists, MDs, doctors, big names, big researchers, big academic credentials. And again, when they look at it all, even when they're looking at ET phenomenon. So I'll just go on a little brief tangent here, because, in the days when, are we seeing craft? Are we seeing extraterrestrial intelligences from other realms? Well, I agree with, the contact line. It sure would be a wasted space if there weren't. I mean, to me, when you see all is conscious, you're like, of course there is. But however, in the original studies, everybody was chasing it as if it were just physical or just something, outside of our solar system or inside or maybe in our galaxy or outside, but all physical. And what these groups of studies came back and revealed is, when you really go down that rabbit hole, while some things may manifest physically and appear physical, a lot of it is still consciousness-based phenomenon. And a really good example to grasp what we're talking about would be, if I'm standing here and I see something that appears physical and you're standing next to me and you don't see this, well, why don't you see it? And yet, apparently, according to the research, I can now ask these extraterrestrial spiritual beings, energy beings, we don't even know what vocabulary to use. It's all, just not human. So they're calling it non-human intelligences now. But I apparently can ask that you see it, and then you will see it. So that's why they're calling everything, right? Like all of the areas of research, here's that motion again. It's all coming in, and it's all revealing how the underlying reality of anything that we call a reality, it's called a reality because there's a structure to it. So we've put a limit on it, but it's still all consciousness based. At its root is some kind of fundamental awareness. And then, like you said, beyond that is the void. But what it all has in common is, if we're talking here and we're talking about someone who's seeking, well, we're just talking about someone who's wanting to remember this complete infinite interconnectedness and the power that it has. And how when you align, like I love the description that you had, but it made me think of, okay, well, when you align with a certain line of energy coming in and you become one with the energy, of course, then the result is you have just amplified that energy, and you're going to create exactly what that energy was. So if you wanted to create a crystal right before our eyes right now, you could. I mean, right? If you align your consciousness with the energetic structure, and yes, I'm using space-time metrics, but if you're aligning your consciousness with all of that, and then it's coming in through an energetic structure of an atom, and your thought and intention is so pure and so coherent or laser-like. Yes, that's a space-time metric, but no wonder you could create it right here. No wonder we can have a port. No wonder people can experience objects that are coming in and then objects disappearing. But right, we're here as these beautiful, energetic, spiritual beings. The beings are infinite. It's all around. I mean, I would love to ask you: is there anything that's not a being?
Well, I mean, you made such a great point. It's like it's all and nothing at the same time. You mentioned the torus field. Within Taoism, we call it the torrid field, which in definition means the celestial heat that generates what we call life force. That's what it is. It's like still to this day, if you were to reflect on the scientific model, they cannot define and understand what generates life.
No, they cannot.
They cannot. It just all of a sudden there is a heartbeat that is present within the development and the evolution, really, the creation of life over a 9-month period. That's why 9 is the most powerful number for a Taoist, and that's reflected in so many different ways within the system.
That makes me want to interject this. I mean, like you said, they don't know what life is, but every time I hear that inside, I just want to holler out from the rooftops, because notice the very assumption that they're doing. They're associating life with the form. The life isn't the form. Well, if you're going to constantly look for the origin of life within a form, no wonder you're never going to find it, because that's not life, right? Life is beyond the form. It's not the form. So it's not the baby. You don't have life once you have a baby. The life precedes the baby. The energetic essence that is really the baby, the being, is now taking form as this other. And even in space-time, right? Energy just keeps changing structure, right? It's just, we don't create or destroy energy, right? Is supposedly the law, is supposedly the absolute, but it's just transforming from one form to another. So there is the energetic being that is the baby, and then now taking the form as this, embryo, and then ultimately fetus, and ultimately child. But at one point in time, when does life begin? Well, it began way back, which is why we can remember being in a womb, which is why we can remember previous lifetimes. And, like you said, it's just life transcends all of that. So if they keep looking for life on other planets and life here and everything, beginning with the form, no wonder they'll never find it. That drives me crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just references for a Taoist, it's you go from the dialogue to the monologue, and that's the now, right? So, I have a dialogue with my teachers, which are facets of what we call perfection. So perfection is the diamond, and it has unlimited facets. So when you realize that you are not of this body, you are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And then the secret source comes out. Then that moment where the dialogue turns into the monologue, the now. If you truly believe you are the now, you're not asking yourself, please, universe, help me heal this. Please, universe, help me manifest this. Please, God, create what it is that I need. I need this special. All of this is a separate sort of like, as we would say within Taoism, the way to walk is not the way. The name that's named is not the name. Tao is all named and nameless. That refers to the bellows. And so the now moment is that it's like the Death Star moment within Star Wars when Luke is flying into the Death Star and he has that one hit, bam, that's the Wu Ji. That's when you get into the secret source, that present moment. And this is when you reveal that, when you realize that you're all and nothing at the same time, profound things take place. And so, coming back to, this understanding, Jade Emperor always reminds me, if you have to learn it, you don't know it. If you know it, you don't have to learn it. People are like, what,
Yep.
Fu, my mind is, but you're teaching me stuff. To the contrary, I am helping you remember. I am guiding you. I am your ambassador to remember who you are. I'm not teaching you anything. You're just revealing it all to yourself. And that would come in that electromagnetic spectrum of everything is energy, frequency, vibration. Okay, what does that mean? So the energy creates a vibration. The vibration creates a frequency. Once you meet that frequency, it's called resonance. You hold that, and then it becomes yours. Oh, yes, it will. It will be the now. You are now creating equal to or greater than within what we call the field. Now, all of a sudden, manifestation, magic, healing is now the representation of the mother, the monologue that is the now.
I love that. And I love, when I was recently having a conversation with that quantum engineer, we were talking about how, the teaching, for instance, the beginning was the word. And we were just talking about how vibration actually comes first, and therefore vibration can precede, but the word is like the vibrational structure of thought itself, of the quantum mind. And no wonder then it has the potential, right? It's carrying the potentiality that you just described, and I love that. And like you said, I keep using the word resonance, which I know drives them crazy because it's such an EM language, but it feels right. And I remember asking recently, because I've asked this 100 times and it feels like I just don't quite ever get an answer. But the question that I've asked is, well, how is electromagnetic resonance? Because know that we feel it. No wonder we say we resonate with it. No wonder electromagnetic resonance makes sense to us, right? If resonating means, wow, we're all these waves and they're all lined up, peaks and valleys, and they're resonating and starting to entrain one another and all becoming one. No wonder that all has meaning for us. And at the same time, if I get corrected and someone's like, well, quantum resonance isn't the same thing as EM resonance, and EM resonance is space-time metric and quantum resonance isn't, well, how's it different? I still really can't get a good explanation. But I did hear recently that you can think of quantum resonance as a quantum register, a quantum address, if you will. So it's not the same, but I still love the word resonance because no matter what, it feels like maybe here's what's coming to me right now. Maybe from an electromagnetic spectrum standpoint, we actually have waves in space-time that have a wavelength. And so we, yes, we have resonance that way. But maybe our thoughts have informational vibrations that are lined up in the same way, that are, because of the law of similarities, like law of attraction, if you will, they're just kind of seeking their own. So, maybe there's like an informational resonance that really might be these vibrational structures that are, they already seek their similarity at that area. I do want to revisit that question I had for you. Do you see anything is not a being? I mean, because when I look out at the planet, when I look out at space itself, when I look out at, I cannot conceive of anything that I can't conceive of as a being.
Yeah. That's why it's so, in my opinion, the mastery of your potential as a tuning fork is in my opinion, the most important thing for a seeker. So you can sample the profiles of all these things and have a very clear understanding of the energetic potential that transmutes into as you put it, the resonance, or as we would call spiritual consciousness, the mother, the now, the life force, and there are gradients of differences with that experience. And once you refine those skills as an alchemist, then you're very clear on what takes place. From a Taoist alchemy perspective, it's a knowing. It's that present moment. It's the center point, which is the Wu Ji. Everything has a center point, no matter what it is.
And you can feel it, like you said. It has it's a, like you said, it's like the Luke Skywalker. I mean, you can feel it when you hit it, and you can feel it when you haven't hit it. I mean, there's a distinct feeling that's different. And when you asked about motivation, and when you were talking earlier about the gift and the giving, what I love about that is, and the reason I'm going to bring this up perhaps is because in some ways that these things get described like, okay, our path of raising our consciousness, or if someone says, where are we on the way, or what level of consciousness have we reached? Sometimes people can get stuck that it's this all or nothing thing. Oh, I can do this on level 1. I can do this on level 2. I can do this on level 3. But, like, I have to go sequentially, and I have to do this thing. And again, that's a language problem that we have. But what I love that helps even a person who's never meditated, and like you said, you can probably teach someone, to do something within 5 minutes. But what I love is for everybody to remember that when their heart is pointed at kind of in a determined way, like, oh, that is happening. Like their heart is pointed in this determined way, especially in a way that's giving, especially in a way that's healing, especially in a way that's serving. Like, it's building someone up. It's building, somehow it's building. It's helping build and construct healing and wholeness in some fashion. As soon as the heart, just what you said, bingo, like it, as soon as the heart goes there, in my experience, the universe just sends. Like, you already have created the conduit, and therefore the energy just sends. So, for example, I never experienced myself as psychic. I still don't really, because, especially when I was younger, psychic usually meant you see ghosts and dead people. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't have that experience, so I must not be psychic. But I would use the word intuitive. But what I especially noticed in my practice is my heart. Like, I truly love my clients. My clients are there. My heart is full. My whole being is centered, focused in, locked in to their whole being. Not only what they're saying, not only what I'm seeing, but like you said, those non-local energies that you feel, like you feel that information. And so, especially when you trust that what's coming in, here's that motion again, and here's that motion again. So when you trust what's coming in and you just share, it comes in and you give. You given and give, given and give, given and give. When you do that, and you just trust that it's for some reason, even if it's not apparent in the beginning, like my clients would then constantly say, you must be psychic, you must be psychic. I mean, it started being like a broken record. But to me, the reason I even bring this up is for the viewers to realize that, like you said, there's many ways, and find the teachers that really resonate with you, right? Like, does this one need this kind of a language? Does this one need a scientific language? Like, who needs what kind of a language, just to understand and let it sink in? But it's all about, like, being given and give, being given and give, being given and give. Like, that's our whole purpose for being in any form, in any universe, is to be given and to give. And that's the motivational to me, that's the motivational force for all creation and all creating of universes. But I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really brings to the point of what a dear friend of mine, E from Why Dharma channel, would say, and it's just a self-evident realization for a Taoist seeker to be done by the Tao.
Mm.
Means that present moment, and you know, we refer to it as the Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. That flow, which more commonly a reference to some type of like synchronicity, serendipity, the flow. You're in the flow. Well, that's been a Taoist realization for thousands of years, and that is, you know, everything is happening. You are all things and nothing at the same time. So we remind people when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest. Whoa. What does that mean? It means that
Mm-hmm.
if you are separated by the dualistic emotional content of your human experience, realize, take a moment, self-check, self-realize, and that's quite problematic and difficult because when you're emotional, you're already unconscious. So let's just say you are training yourself within a neural pattern of awareness to keep reinforcing this synapses sort of like experience where you can start training in a different direction of understanding and making it more pliable, which is sort of like the grounded seeds of an alchemical processes, because we use this flesh and blood as a beginning point, but then we go way beyond that when we merge the metals, gold, platinum, silver, the pure crystalline alchemical processes of the expression of now. That's the magic stuff. That's the stuff that is, you know, the highest ascension or expression of that. So within Taoism, it starts with the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, then it goes to the sun body, the moon body, the earth body, and then finally it goes from the oneness body, the ultimate body, to the being all things. And this is direct source information from someone who's new age, Akashic records, halls of a mente. I'm just having a download, I'm feeling it, whatever it might be. This is the now, and it will be self-evident because you're able to bring this information to you, as you refer to the torus field, as we refer to the torrid field, the celestial heat that is generated to acknowledge the now, that merging of it within Taoism. This is the upper dantian, the energy field, which we call the light. The middle dantian, the energy field, we call the information. The lower dantian, the energy field, we call the energy. And you merge those two. Electromagnetic merges one. Conscious and unconscious processes. All is one, one is all. And from a brainwave perspective, you would hit the old gamma, baby. You know, I do 40 hertz and above. I've measured it many times, witnessing, you know, physical healings. I've gone from 40 to 400 channeling, and it's sort of like doesn't really reflect on a Hawkins model of measuring of consciousness, because I believe he's measuring it in hertz. That doesn't really, you know, hit there. I can hit 100 hertz and watch a miracle take place, you know.
Yeah, I don't even know if he was measuring it in hertz or anything. I just thought it was a subjective measure. But
Right. A lot of people are measuring it. That's the only way that I could make sense of how you would even correlate that information and represent it as a scientific model if you're not measuring in some type of like metrics. It doesn't.
You know what? That reminds me of Anirban Bandyopadhyay is a quantum physicist that I interviewed recently, and you see him now at all these science of consciousness ones because he's the one that found the quantum oscillations within the microtubules within the neurons, which was hypothesized by the Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose's model, the ORC-OR. And so they basically were helping, Anirban was helping validate the theory by finding the quantum oscillations. But the reason I bring that up is because as I was talking more to Anirban, he talked about how for sure consciousness is non-local. And he was talking about when he would hook up, let's say 12 brains, meaning human. He's tasked with developing an artificial brain, but he was talking about his human subjects, and he was hooking them up. And basically there was a couple points he was making, but one point was one person would smell something and you watched all the brains react. One person tastes something, one person smells, touches, like all the brains react. The other point he was making was measuring exactly what you were talking about. And he was watching it go into, gigahertz, terahertz, like off the chart kinds of things that were happening. And so I think you and I both are definitely interested in that kind of research of measuring what's going on in the brain, because sometimes people who will talk about it, the word backwards or upside down is coming, but I don't really know how to describe this, because on one hand, if you just look at the traditional brain waves that were described, were, beta being awake, alpha more relaxed, theta even more deeper meditative, and then delta associated with sleep. And then I remember in some of the first healing studies when they were measuring gamma rays, coming from the meditators. And so then someone was like, oh, well, because like you said, in New Age lingo, it's all about higher frequency, higher frequency, higher frequency. So gamma is higher frequency than beta, but sleep, this is lower frequency. So on one hand, when they first started going in the direction of meditation, it was lower frequency. It wasn't higher frequency. But then all of a sudden, in certain really experienced meditators, you were seeing gamma, and that was higher frequency. So this measurement is all going to be confusing for people for a while, because again, like you mentioned earlier, we don't really know how to interpret this. And what I'm learning lately is anything that's frequency anyway is still associated with space-time. It's not really a measure of that which is coming beyond. Which brings me to what you just said about light and information. So and it dovetails with the heart math kind of research, because remember when heart math research came out, before that, Western psychology is just right, and still is so fixated with the brain and so fixated with neurons and brain being associated. Consciousness is an epiphenomenon of that. Really nothing in a role for a heart at all, because it was just all about the brain. And then heart math comes along and it's trying to say, well, excuse me, the heart is sending even more signals to the brain. And then basically the picture started emerging that it kind of originates with the heart and then basically is transduced to the brain, which then transforms it in even more electromagnetic. So you're kind of like the higher to the lower, higher, a little lower, and throughout all the neurons a little bit lower. And so notice that dovetails to the newer models coming out, that information is first, right? Information is first. And so God is love, that if we use that metaphor, God is love. And God is, like you said, all knowing, or the information is first. And then it's getting transduced to light. So no wonder a near-death experiencer will feel the love and the interconnectedness and the wholeness and get down the information in the downloads, but then we'll see God as a light body. And so a picture to me is starting to emerge of the love and the information is the primary, the light body is the vehicle. And that seems to dovetail with exactly the Taoist teaching that you were talking about, right? And then you pointed at energy coming from the root chakra, was it? And that
it's
chakra,
from what we call the lower dantian.
the lower dantian.
This
Okay.
is the sun. This
higher
is the
dantian.
earth. This is the sun, the upper dantian. The earth is the middle dantian. The lower dantian is the moon, which is the culmination of the two.
Yeah.
So all is one, one is all. And people are like, whoa, we refer to it as magnetic fluidity. We call it the mother. And so people are like, whoa, hang on, what about the father? Well, that's also everything and nothing at the same time. Yet when I access my yin eyes, all of a sudden you access intuitive levels of understanding that go beyond this electromagnetism that we speak of. That's how I access instant information from that point, that center point that we speak of. And so that's when you go, hang on a second, I don't need any science. Whatever you're saying, Jifu, is resonating through my physical body that is limited with the electromagnetic spectrum. But hell, what the heck? I am sold. I know, you know what the truth is. And that
when you hit that point, yeah, it's
the
a
truth
knowing.
is the center point, right? The truth teller is the center point. So everything has a profile, an electromagnetic profile. So I can take a cup, I can take a can of soda. I can create and show you evidence of the electromagnetic spectrum from that. What are you talking about? It has a center point. I can bring in a spirit. I can bring in that mother energy, transmute this, and this is what I access vortices. So I teach people what they call body dowsing, which is an ancient Taoist practices where you access power centers, ley lines, energetic profiles and properties through vortices, and they're throughout the environment that you're around.
Yes.
So you're able to decipher the properties and the profiles of all these energetic potential. And that comes from the cultivation of the internal alchemy practices. And so then all of a sudden, all bets are off. So when you transmute, for example, I offer to people the center point, the mother. So what happens is they receive 18 stones with a center point plate, which is made out of a certain type of metal. And that instantly accesses a vortices like, something out of Star Trek. And people are like, what the hell is going on here? And this is like, you can put a glass on it. It transmutes through your very environment. So people use it. A lot of people that purchase these put them in soil, put them around, or lay them on a soil spot that cannot grow any sort of growth, especially out in the desert. And so when they put that down, it affects at a subatomic particle, like literally miles from that point that you drop it in. And I don't have to babysit or monitor anyone. This is being altered instantaneously. And people are like, holy crap, I haven't been able to grow anything here for 20 years. I'm growing all types of fruits and vegetables that was not possible until this vortices was generated. And I sum it to a point of just, I am a catalyst and conduit for this resonance. And it's brought at this present moment, and you can imprint it. And so, I love getting people to take an object, anything, I'll imprint it in front of them, and they'll pick it up and go, holy, this is so heavy. I can't believe the whole property has changed. And that charge you got right now is like, it's real. And so I'm a show me guy. So
know what I love about that is the Stanford material scientist who did all kinds of conventional things at Stanford, but then he went off on his own, William A. Tiller. And for example, he was able to show, he would take experienced meditators, and he would definitely show how they had effects on living, non-living, all kinds of effects on different objects. But he could show how direct intention could affect all of that. Direct intention can affect random event generators and, kind of act as like psychokinesis devices, if you will. And on top of that, he coined the phrase conditioned spaces, because he was able to show how, let's say the experienced meditators went ahead and imprinted an object, a random event generator that's supposedly random, right? So this is no magic. It's just it might as well be the, what's that round thing in the commercial that goes around vacuuming kind of?
The Roomba.
The Roomba.
I reference to that analogy too.
Yes, right. It might as well be a Roomba. It's just kind of going around a room randomly, if you will. So it's just a device. And yet experienced meditators can affect the movements of these random event generator devices. And when let's say when these random event generators are left in the space, let's say the experiment's over, they're no longer trying to change the pH of water, but the device is still there. The device will still have effects. And so they've even, he was able to scientifically validate exactly what you're saying, that human mind, human intention can affect devices, and these devices can have effects. And he was able to kind of show, he hypothesized this reciprocal space. It's not really important for us to talk about too much, but and you and I and the viewers don't really care what gauge symmetry of the space really is. But isn't it cool that as a physicist, he could say, wow, it's no longer this like U1 symmetry, it's an SU2 gauge symmetry. And he can measure the effects of what you're talking about in the physics of the space, the mind conditions of physics of the space. And he's, like you said, a Stanford, very renowned physicist.
Yeah, I mean, and the imprinting, it just, what happens is once someone receives one of these vortices, it's like their life becomes ridiculously, stupidly lucky, and it comes in all
Lucky.
forms. Lucky, and a lot of people will sit. It's all again psychological for them to sit in it. Like it's permeating everything for miles. I don't want to give a distance or a limitation, but once you drop this into your environment, all bets are off. You become the local healer. All of a sudden things are just great. But you can see evidence like putting a cup of water in that vortices will transmute it at a subatomic level, and it comes in the form of anything and everything that you want. So someone will drop it in, and they will instantly be able to go, whoa, oh my goodness, the weight, the density of this has been transmuted. It's been transformed. And then if you want to waste your time measuring it, I just go by the self-evident results, whether it's a physical healing or manifestation. And, magic in of itself is really working on the infrastructure of micro specific manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do magic within Taoism, we call on, as we talk about, your gift is your offering. Everything is a mirrored effect. What is on earth is a representation of the universe. Yet, so what does that mean? It means that we use star stepping to correlate the constellation, and we draw in those energies at will. And once you realize you are the present moment, you use those to navigate through your 3D reality at a superhuman level, and you're doing crazy things that could be, considered Harry Potter wizardry, but it's just understanding how to access that present moment and to cultivate those. And they're very palpable, they're very real. And that's self-evidence. The self-evidence is critical. It's like measure it yourself, whether it's I'm initially a humanistically expression of skepticism, and so I'm a show me guy. Self-evidence is critical, and so I'm a Pepsi challenge guy. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anybody on this stuff because I'll show you. And people are like, whether it comes in the form of a channeled direct source information. I remember the first time I channeled Lao Tzu, my teacher at the time on the human plane had cultivated channeling consciously for 60 years. And he literally jaw dropped and went, how in Tao's name? I've been doing this stuff for 60 years consciously. And you walk in one hit. And, at that time I was transmitting energy. What happens is it's like a light beam. When you experience it, it's a again, the substance is not of this earth plane, and it will come down in a light beam as if you're beam me up, Scotty, and it will transmute through your whole physical body as a channel. And I emit this heat, this torrid heat, this celestial heat, and people would get, sticks with marshmallows on the end of them and cook them through the transmission because it's visceral. And you go, whoa, this is really happening. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes. And so that's the self-realization. And then the prolific, profound sort of prophet messaging that comes out of Lao Tzu or any of my teachers is beyond. It's just like, you cannot make this stuff up. Are we? Oh, okay. I think I apologize, but I'm going to have to cut this a little short. this has sort of like been so profound, this conversation, that I want to continue this at a further point. I think we just got started, to be quite honest.
Anytime. It's such a delight. I do have a quick question for you.
Yes, sure.
And this is a selfish question, admittedly. Have you worked with scientists, because they do need the research, right? And it's so helpful when experiencers like yourself, right, and the level of the things that you're talking about are allowing them to measure so that they can see and get the feedback and add to the scientific literature, which just comes back to validate all of this, right? Like my selfish reason is we need to change psychology, we need to change medicine. So I would love to hear, even if it's at another time, like what maybe kind of work are you doing with any researchers, or if you're available or open and willing for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a show me guy. I've been pursuing Dean Radin for a while. He's just been super busy, but
Well, and Dean, of course, just keeps in a certain thing, but I we'll talk later. But I have some people I would love to hook you up with, even.
Oh no, I would love that. I've been measuring my brain waves for years, so I can tell when there's activity and inactivity just through the attunement of my sensory perception for the Taoist practices. But it's always fun to go, oh, look at that brainwave. Wow. Because for the audience, just briefly, gamma is 100% consciousness in definition. That means that you access all states at once. So the really powerful part about that, the emulation between, gamma and what I get down to, which is epsilon, is they're all and nothing at the same time. And you obtain that access where when you're in gamma, you can go straight to alpha, delta, epsilon. And that is a potentiality that depends on where you're at in your own cultivation. But it's through that measurement that you go, whoa, how is that possible? And you just watch it come out. It's like, holy crap, this is, you should be asleep right now.
Yeah, like you said, this is real. So it's just been such a delight to get to know you a little bit.
Real pleasure, my dear friend. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. In closing, I'll ask you one question. What is your definition of consciousness?
Well, right now, probably in the most simplicity, I would say information being carried by energy into this plane.
I love it.
That way it includes everything.
I love it. There's never been the same answer. I've done hundreds of podcasts and I've never had the same answer. I think that's the beauty of the now. Is
absolutely,
it's unique and it's all things. It's all or nothing. And with that, in closing, I want to put all your social media under this podcast and where people can find you. And I recommend and offer all seekers, my students, my subscribers, everyone, come and check out what is being offered by Valerie and go to a deeper understanding, reading her book, reading a better sort of like synchronized knowing about what this really means. And we will revisit this conversation in the future, my dear friend.
That sounds good. And maybe just the last thought would be, if someone is thinking of getting my book, if you have experienced higher consciousness and you're experiencing a need for self-help in guiding you through, it's really a self-help book. The first chapter might give you a little primer, if you will, about the energy body and like you said, the dantians and what have you, in a language that bridges across traditions and what have you. But most of the book is a lot about the challenges that we face, the things that happen, and we can, it's self-help. So thank you so much, San Qing.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I really appreciate you. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today.
Absolutely.
I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.